Yeah, welcome to another World Cup daily edition of the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. Hope you've been enjoying our daily podcasts out and about around the World Cup. You feel free to subscribe to the channel, of course, please, and also to give it a like as well if you enjoy what you do. Well, you're going to love this one because we brought together two legends of the football conversation together on this podcast. Philippe Auclair, also a friend of this podcast in any case, European football writer, amongst other things, and the oracle of African football, Mark Gleeson. No, honestly, genuinely, this wasn't planned, but it makes my day and my World Cup delightful to have you two gentlemen together on one podcast. It really is a feast of pleasures for us. And thank you both for agreeing. And there's a lot to talk about. So we're kind of halfway through the World Cup now, coming to the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end, whichever it was that Churchill said we were at. And I suppose, reflecting on yesterday, Philippe, the France game was the France Norway game was the eye opener, if that's a way to put it. But did you? Yeah, well, yeah, you're shaking your head one way or another, and I know
Yeah.
why. But please tell us.
Well, I don't want to become the professional contrarian, but I do I do think that what we saw was a really lovely festival game, a bit like a benefit match or the equivalent of the Community Shield. Solbakken decided to field not even a B team, I think a C team, really, if anything is possible with that kind of squad, and to protect all of his main players, which means you had 10 changes. It was not the normal Norway team. It was not the Norway team. And because of that, the way both teams approached the game and played it was very different from what we were expecting. And I have to say, I was talking to some friends in Norway about it. I don't think Solbakken's decision has gone down too well in his own country. Not necessarily because of the results, which nobody was expecting Norway to batter France. Uh, that's not what. But the fact that you had tens of thousands of Norwegian fans who had actually traveled to America to see their team for that game, and who basically were shorthanded, and um, and the game, I don't know. I felt that it was the very antithesis of what, for example, we lived in the game between Germany and Ecuador, which was fantastic, and in the game between Spain and Uruguay, which was horrible, but where you felt there was something at stake, and there was nothing at stake. So yes, it was very pretty on the eye. The Dembélé hat trick was of the highest quality. The key Mbappé assists were, especially the first one, is just magnificent, completely unbalanced, absolutely superb. The Norwegian goal was delicious. Asgard, just dropping a shoulder and sending Upamecano the wrong way, which, by the way, is not the last time it's going to happen in this World Cup. I've told you, you remember that Upamecano for me is a big, big problem in that French defense, but there you go. But for all these reasons, yes, it was a very pleasant game, but it felt to me like there was nothing attached to it. There was nothing attached to it, and because of that, I will reserve my judgment on France. France played Senegal, had a very tough first half against Senegal, then moved Olise to number 10 position, and then it worked. Then they played against an Iraq team, which took 21 games to qualify for the World Cup. Well done them, but they are not very good at all. And then they played against the B team from Norway, and you want to draw any kind of conclusions from that? I don't.
Yeah, Mark, to a certain extent, I can understand why the Norwegians are upset at the way that Solly Solback and the Norwegian coach played this. Of course, Philippe is right. There was no Erling Haaland on the pitch, no Martin Odegaard on the pitch, etc., etc. And you thought, what are they doing? And when they scored that delicious goal, as Philippe put it, you thought, hang on a second, you know, they could get something out of this. And they seemed to have their tails up for a minute. Was it completely underwhelming for you?
Well, to be honest with you, Dotun, I had it out the corner of my eye because I was watching Senegal playing Iraq at the same time. But
Mm.
I do get why they did it, and I think we got to reserve a little bit of judgment later on down the line, whether it was perhaps a bit of a masterstroke, well, not a masterstroke, but whether it was a good idea on his part to rest everybody. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time that you have the opportunity to do so because you've already qualified after 2 matches. I was surprised maybe the French didn't also give some of the other guys a bit of
Yeah.
a break. Um, and it was, to be fair, a game to decide first place. But I mean, even Haaland was saying before the time, you know, France are going to win this game. They're going to beat us. We're not at the same standard. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, let's see down the line whether it worked to their benefit. You know, there's always two arguments you hear from managers: is consistency in team selection and of course momentum, and that's been broken. And they did have some great momentum. I thought Norway against Senegal, they looked really good. Um, and then there's the other counter argument that in a tournament situation like this, rest is also important, and let's see how that turns out. But yeah, I think, look, it's the end of the group stages now. We're only getting to the business of this World Cup, starting tomorrow.
Yeah, and with regards to Dembele's hat trick, which obviously was the story in this, or the main story, the main footballing story, perhaps. Are we to conclude then that Mbappe is no longer in the race for the Golden Boot? Because just a few days ago, well, just a few days ago, Philippe, we saw the big guns strikers come in there and throw their hat in the ring for the Golden Boot, with Lionel Messi leading the pack, but Mbappe not far behind on 4 goals rather than 5 for Lionel Messi. I wonder whether Mbappe, because you know, if this was Argentina, they would just said, look, Dembele would have just said, no, 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 you take it. No, go on, Messi, you take it. It would have been like that. But yeah, what are we to make of Dembele?
um, that he had a terrible first game, that he broke his duck in the second, and that he was his old self in the third. So that's the positive. That's the great positive. And also that the combination with Mbappe in the middle and Dembele on the right worked this time. It hasn't worked in the past, to be honest. But this time it worked, but against a Norwegian defense that, shall we say, was quite generous, because it allowed the same move 3 times for the 3 goals.
Yes, yes, exactly.
As in,
Exactly
well,
the same goal.
you might be aware of the fact that Dembele is quite quick, and he just goes inside and he hits it with his left foot. Oh yes, okay. Oh, we'd forgotten. Oh, we'd forgotten again. Oh,
Yes.
oh we'd forgotten again and again. So they did it. So that was great. That was great for Dembele's confidence. The one thing though I have to mention for France is that it was a strange game, and that we shouldn't forget that, because I do think that it has been mentioned enough outside of France, but you will know that Didier Deschamps lost his mother and had to fly back to France, and the funeral was on the day of the game. And I think the players have been genuinely affected by that. And because they're linked to Deschamps is perhaps stronger than what we would imagine. And there's one thing I want to mention it, so I hope you don't mind that, but I
No,
find
not
it
at all.
absolutely unbelievable that FIFA, who are always so quick to be to exploit any, I mean, yes, I mean they're very manipulative for that. Anytime there's a tragedy, they want to mark it to show that they unite the world. In this particular case, they refused the request from the French team to wear a black armband, in sympathy with their manager who was burying his mum on that day. I find that absolutely disgraceful and disgusting.
Agreed, agreed,
And
agreed.
what difference does it make? It was a private gesture and a public gesture, but it was especially a private gesture because they knew that Didier would be watching the game to say, "Coach, we're with you on one of what's it must be one of the hardest days of your life." And FIFA said, "No, you can't do that." I had to say it because I feel really
No,
angry about it.
and you can hear Mark agrees with you. I agree with you, and I think most people around the world will agree with you. I can't hear anybody dissenting from what you say. A proper own goal from FIFA there, Mark. Are you
Yeah.
surprised though?
No, not at all. I mean, they walk around with a pistol and aim it regularly at their own toes, and fire off fairly frequently. It's a strange organization. Look, to be fair, logistically and organizationally here at the World Cup, it's his usual competent self. But those little personal touches, which is a lot about of what the game is about, are. Are really missing. And I think the sort of Americanization, for example, of the walkout, I find that I don't know if Philippe agrees with me or he thinks it's a bit petty, but I find that whole walkout thing, American basketball style that they tried at the Club World Cup last year, just tinkers with one of the fundamentals of an international football match. You walk out in a straight line, and you line up and you sing the anthem and you walk across. And I mean, shaking of the hands is a fairly new thing, maybe the last 15, 20 years, but it's been something that we've become accustomed to. Now it's a whole show with everyone in a semicircle, and oh no, it just looks like a dog's breakfast. And I think they're just too many people sitting in meetings trying to outwit each other with silly ideas, I think, in that FIFA house in Zurich. So, yeah, I mean, it might be a little bit of a petty issue, but it does grate me
It's
when I
not.
watch that nonsense.
Oh no, I mean, I think this World Cup in maybe not a major way, but is a battle for the soul of football stroke soccer. Um, and that battle has been introduced by FIFA's inability to read the room. You know, that's why we sit here and say, what are they doing to our football? Okay, fair enough. We know all the health reasons for a water break, which is what I prefer to call it anyway. Hydration just doesn't work. You're trying to pretend it's
Don't
something that
forget
it's
to
not.
mention Powerade. It's
Yeah,
the
oh yeah, of course.
Powerade
Yeah. Well,
hydration
somebody's got
drink.
somebody's got to sponsor it, haven't they?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
Yes.
but we are engaged in this, I don't know, rearguard action against some of the things that FIFA's trying to introduce into the sport. But I suspect when the sport goes back to its domestic or local arenas, there will be a kickback on that, but we'll wait and see. But isn't it funny that the way that you described it a moment two ago, Philippe, that Norway failed to read the room with Dembele? He did exactly what Saka does. This is what Saka does all day and night. You know what he's going to do. He's a left footer. He's been played on the right hand side. He's going to want to come in on his left, and he's going to back, and they're still not able to stop him. Why? Why? They must
Well,
have known after
but
that first time, this is what he does.
he's pretty good at doing it. It was
Yes,
Sneijder was exactly the same. And I think we can. Garincha, everybody knew what Garincha was going to
it's
do when he
true.
was doing this. A little bit of samba on the left, samba on the right, and then goodbye. And but there's nothing you can do about that. But in the case of the Norwegians, it was crazy. It was like, we don't want to know what he's doing. We're just, anyway. We know we're not going to play together. We've never played together before. We never play together again. We're going to have fun. And to be honest, I have to say that if I want to look at this game seriously, if it's allowed for a second, because it was not really a serious game. First thing is that Oscar Bob was terrific for the Norwegians, and that I think that he has a real claim to be a starter for Norway now, from now on. And with Nusa, Udegaard, and Holland and Oscar Bob, they've got an absolutely fantastic front four. And we know they can score goals for fun. I mean, they did in the qualifiers. Ask the Italians what they think about the Norwegians, they'll tell you. So that was good. But the other thing is that there were also some frailties from this French team. That's also one of the reasons why it was such a bizarre game, and I don't know if there is anything to be taken from it. To be absolutely honest, apart from the fact that Dembele is pretty good with his left foot, which I think we knew before, and
Mhm.
and he might, you never know, and maybe I don't know, the Norwegians didn't want to face the Swedes in the round of 32. and preferred the Ivory Coast. I don't know why, because the Swedes are very good. Then the Ivory Coast,
Yeah,
I
local
don't
rivalry.
know.
Let's just put it that
Well,
way.
if you remember, just before the World Cup, the Norwegians gave the Swedes an absolute thrashing in that. I think it was their
Absolutely.
final warm-up
I
game.
was
Yeah.
I was there in Oslo, the last game before they flew to the World Cup, and they, Swedes didn't look too clever that day, but anyway.
Yeah, it's not the best Swedish squad at all. Meanwhile, though, Mark, whilst the French game was going on, you had an eye on Senegal, who I think it's fair to say thrashed Iraq. Was that unexpected, given their not entirely magnificent performances? No, that's unfair. No, I apologise. That is unfair because actually, I
No,
think
no,
performances.
I think you're on the right track. I think
Okay.
they looked a little flat in those first two games. I think losing to France, and Tim made this point on this podcast a week or so ago, was a real sort of confidence blow to Senegal. And in the game against Norway, that kind of manifested itself a little bit. And of course, they made some bad errors at the back, and Koulibaly in particular has, maybe seen the end of his international career now, and he was moved out of the game. He made some strange changes, I thought, for the Iraq game. Papa Gay on the bench when he really is the driving force in the middle for them. But he was another who had particularly poor two matches, and maybe a little spell on the bench never hurt anyone. But Iraq were never. I think Senegal were always going to beat Iraq. The point was by how much, because goals were important. All these teams on 3 points, waiting to see whether they can make it as amongst the third place finishers. It's going to be determined on goal difference. I mean, Scotland, I think, still got a minute chance if Algeria get badly beaten, and I think if Croatia lose as well. But they're on -3, and Senegal went into the game obviously having lost twice, so a minus goal differential with France and with Norway. What was it? -3, I think. So
Yeah.
winning 5-0 certainly has now officially confirmed them as one of the best placed third place finishers. So they are through. It's not yet sure who they're going to play, but they needed that second half. It was up against 10 men. Iraq were down to 10 men after 30 minutes. It was a little bit of a sort of a flat track bully thing, but at the end of the day, you take your chances in those kind of matches and you do your thing. And I think now I think there's a lot more confidence back in the squad, and maybe one or two more tweaks, and we might see a much better Senegal than we've seen so far. From an African perspective, they've been a massive letdown because I've been pontificating for months now, saying that I think that Africa's never seen a team, or Africa's never sent a squad of this depth and quality to a World Cup previously. And even Morocco in Qatar 4 years ago, the depth in the Senegalese squad is the best we've seen from Africa, and they hold out the best hope for some sort of achievement, maybe a place in the final, perhaps, or third position. But yeah, they've been a big disappointment, big disappointment. But it's not over yet.
No, not at all. There's a lot to pay for. Although that group is over. Group I is over. Group H perhaps produced the most joyous moment of the World Cup when Cape Verde qualified to the next round. I mean, they've won the World Cup, I think, Philippe. For their islands, for their 500,000 population, they've won the World Cup. And I fear for them. I fear for them in the next round in a way, because I'm looking at that and thinking, if you've won the World Cup, your mind's half on the beach afterwards, isn't it?
Oh, listen, they've been so impressive. They've been so inspiring. I think they're everybody's favorite second team now in the tournament, and I think for some people, they are they are the favorite team. Full stop. Everything around them is refreshing, wonderful, uplifting. All the personal stories. But I think, well, Mark follows African football more closely than I do, but I still follow it. And I can't say that I'm entirely surprised that they should be doing well, because I remember what they did in the AFCON couple of years ago. And I also remember the way they qualified for the World Cup in a group that was not exactly an easy one, where they had to see off Angola and Cameroon in particular. And they were absolutely magnificent in that group, and they topped it, which is why I keep saying to people, oh, it's great that the World Cup is expanded to like 275 teams because Cape Verde can be there. And I said, no, Cape Verde would have been there in the old format because they topped their group, guys. And, look at them. They're not a bad team. They're a very good team. And the defensive organization is absolutely magnificent. But they also can play some very decent football when they want to. And yes, well, what can you say? There are teams which have already won the World Cup. And even Haiti, for me, has won the World Cup because of that goal they scored and because of just being there and scoring one of the most astonishing long-distance strikes I've seen in the World Cup. By the way, I want to put it to you. You can come back to that later. I don't remember a single World Cup in which I have seen as many amazing goals from distance. I don't. I've watched a few. I don't remember a single one. But yeah, for Cape Verde, I mean, what next? I don't know. I have no idea. Do you think how far can you go in belief? And I hope in their case very far. And but anyway, they've already won, so I don't think they will relax because they're not that type of group of players, and he's not that kind of manager. But
And look, I was
best of
being
luck to them.
I was being facetious, of course. Then my second favorite team, and
Who's your
I wanted
favorite
to.
there, Dotun? Who's your favorite?
I'd have to go for England at this stage,
Yeah.
but I don't think they're going to win it. If you're asking me that question,
Okay,
it's a different question.
Never
But
crossed my mind to ask you whether England were going to win. What a ridiculous
thank you.
notion.
Thank you for saving me from that moment. But it'll be great if they do win. I'm happy to be proved wrong. But with Cape Verde, though, and do feel free to answer the point that Philippe made as well about the long distance shots, whether it's like technique, the technique of scoring from long distance has been mastered now by even some of the smaller teams. But with Cape Verde, um, it is a different kind of stage of a World Cup when you go from group stage to knockout. I know that goes without saying, but I imagine that there are a different way of playing it or approaching a knockout game. And I wonder if Cape Verde's got that in them. They're great in the group stages, best out of 3 if you like, best out of 4, whatever. But are they good when it comes to FA Cup finals?
Yeah, I mean, again, Philippe touched on it, but they've got a good past history. They were quarterfinalists in their very first Cup of Nations in 2013 in South Africa. They lost narrowly to Ghana in Port Elizabeth, if I remember correctly. They got through the last 16 at the Cup of Nations in the Ivory Coast, and they lost to South Africa on penalties in the quarterfinals, and really should have won that game. They were much the better team. I think they're up for it. I think they'll. I mean, there is the Messi factor, and it is Argentina, and they're gonna. There's going to be massive support for Argentina as well in Miami. But I think they'll be up for it, and I don't think they're going to be overawed, and I don't think they're going to be outdone. I don't think they're going to be humiliated at all. I think they're going to give Argentina a good run for their money, and it's at the end of the day, it might come down to a little moment of magic from a quality player, and that's the one thing perhaps that Cape Verde lack is they're a good solid side, but they don't really have a dynamic finisher, a sort of a genius playmaker who could do something special and win the game. So if they get a chance, you've got to hope that they can put it away. But it's going to be an absorbing clash that I think we're all going to enjoy. And you never know. You never know, Dotun. You never know how these things turn
No.
out.
And allow me just one humorous moment, just one, and I promise you after this I'll take Cape
plenty.
or Cabo Verde very, very seriously. But and you said that they're not going to be overawed by the fact that it's Argentina and Messi. But who's going to win the race for Messi's shirt at the end? Which one of them is going to win the race for
He's
Messi's
not
shirt
playing.
after? Messi's
Oh,
not
that'd be-
playing.
No.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just teasing you.
No,
Okay.
you're right. See,
Thank
they
you
did
for
say-
that. My jaw
they did
dropped.
say- They did say something of the sort, but look, whether he's playing or not, he's going to be around on the bench somewhere. So I don't know who's going to win that.
Right.
Yeah, there's a certain lack of dignity to that sort of chasing after a big name player and seeking to swap the shit. And I've seen it before with players actually wanting to take a selfie of an opponent's.
Yeah.
Thankfully, at the end of a game rather than the beginning of a game. But yeah, I think that kind of stuff should be reserved for the change room, away from the eyes of the public, and keep a little bit of dignity.
Oh, you're old school, mate. You are
Yeah,
old school.
absolutely,
That's
absolutely.
no, it's
Yeah,
anymore.
nothing wrong with that.
Talking of old school, Uruguay won the World Cup twice, and they've got the 2 stars on the shirt to prove it, although it was a long, 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 long time ago. And we're a long, 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 long way away from the Uruguay team of 2010 that played
Yeah.
in the World Cup in South Africa, Philippe. I'm not sure. Well, to what extent is this Marcelo Bielsa's fault that they got knocked out of the World Cup at the group stage?
No, I don't think it's his fault. I mean, there's loads of talk about that. There's talk of a players' revolt as well, that they decided they wouldn't play according to his instructions. That Valverde, in particular, had said things about the impossibility of pressing like the Spaniards, like Bielsa would want them to. I have to say that again, I'm a bit of a contrarian here because I watched that game intently. I was really interested in it because I do have my doubts about this Spanish team. I think the Spanish team
Mm.
is not as good as it was in 2024. I think it is quite raw and quite fragile in some ways. Um, I could carry on like that for a while. And I was thinking, well, Uruguay, being in the situation they're in, are going to prove a real test. And the thing is that, despite the fact they were not very good and actually quite mediocre at times, they proved a real test. The only goal they scored, Spain, was this awful mistake, which was very sad. We all agreed that we didn't want such a great career ending such a bad mistake for one of the great keepers of South American football. But, you know, that's it happens. And then after being hooked at halftime as well, that was absolutely horrible. But Spain didn't show an awful lot. And some friends of mine have said, well, they didn't have to. And I thought, hold on a minute. They did have to. They wanted to win that group. They wanted to win it. They wanted to guarantee the result. And there were quite a few moments in the game where they didn't look that clever. The problem is that Uruguay, apart, I think Araujo had a superb game on the left wing. Nunez was Nunez, or Darwin if you prefer. Valverde is really knackered and also perhaps in the best, I think, carrying an injury or something. So, and they do not have quite the wealth of great players that they had in the past. And we all know the Edinson Cavani's and Diego Forlans and Luis Suarez's and so forth. They don't have that anymore. But they still pose problems to that Spanish team. And they will go home wondering how on earth it was possible they went home. But there was a real intensity to that game. And again, I think we tend to watch games sometimes with already a prism in place, as it we know that these people are the favorites for the World Cup, and therefore, or we know Musiala or Yamal or Mbappe are great players. So for Yamal yesterday, he had a rotten game. Promise you, he had a rotten game. He lost the ball a number of times. He tried too hard, didn't have any finished product, took the wrong decisions time and time again, did a couple of absolutely amazing things because he's an amazing player, but he was not good. And he's not fit. And that's clear. And I'm putting all these things together. I'm thinking, actually, Uruguay, they were crap. We quite agree on that. And it's not Marcelo Bielsa's fault if this generation of players is not quite up to the same standard as previous generation of players, though they keep some habits. And I'm sure that both of you will remember, you know, dear old Uruguay not being exactly the best team to accept defeat and perhaps a bit over physical at times. That end of the game was, I actually quite enjoyed it
Mad.
because they
No.
reverted to type and it was
Oh, there you go.
brutal.
It's time.
It was
Yeah, I'm not.
brutal.
I'm not sure it was family entertainment. That's the only thing I would say.
Well,
I was, I was sitting there
nobody got
thinking, "Oh, God,
nobody got
I,
hurt apart from
yeah."
poor Ugarte. I mean, he's the only one
I,
who got
I
hurt.
was when you saw the referee and his assistants backing off, like,
Yeah.
please just stay where you are. Then it's like when you're on a demonstration and you see the police start running, and I've seen it. I've seen it. When you see the backs of the police start running, you think, "Oh my goodness, I'm in the wrong place. I'm in absolutely the wrong place to be." But um, it, to a certain extent, Marcelo Bielsa in a somewhat bizarre um, press conference after the match seemed to be taking the blame for the failure, which is the dignified thing to do, of course. I wonder, though, whether, despite this being a pretty average Uruguay team in the way Philippe describes it, Mark, I wonder whether they missed the opportunity here because Spain weren't all that either.
Yeah, I think you've got to go back 2 games as well. I mean, starting with a draw against the Saudis, and to be fair, against Cape Verde, they gave it away with that horrible defensive error in the second half. It was a great finish from Valera to even it up for Cape Verde, but they did kind of gift it to them. They did gift them a point there, and that those 2 matches for Uruguay on paper are six. That's 6 points. So I think the Spain game was always going to be a little bit of a tough hill to climb on the back of 2 matches that they really should have put away and banked the points and been safely ensconced into the next round. But having said that, again, I was watching Cape Verde at the same time, so I did see a little bit of that scuffle because the local TV here switched over, but I'd much preferred actually to watch the Cape Verde celebrations afterwards, which unfortunately they cut away from and gave us the squabble of the Uruguayans and the Spaniards, to my great
It's
disappointment.
funny. That's an interesting thing because our commentary was the other way around. They were following the Spain Uruguay match and took the scuffle initially, and then thought, stuff that. Let's go back to something that will please our
Yeah.
advertisers. Joyful moment that will please FIFA, please our advertisers, and they went straight to the joyful celebrations in Cape Verde. And I must say, it brought a tear to my eye as well because it was then that you realize, yeah, despite all attempts to steal this beautiful game from us, there is something so pure about it that makes grown men jump up like crazy, in front of cameras and scream their heads off, and women as well. I'm not suggesting that, but it's magic, isn't it? It's magic. So good luck to them. Just one final question for you both: will England come top of their group or not?
Against Panama?
No, well, I'm just thinking Ghana is their competition for the top of the group.
I
Yeah,
can't.
obviously,
I can't see Ghana beating Croatia. I can see them perhaps getting a draw. I think. I think England will top the group if you're that worried about it. Um,
I am. I'm concerned.
but
Only kidding.
but they're through anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they would go to Atlanta as Group F winners, and I think they play one of the third place teams still to be determined. Wouldn't be England Senegal game would be quite appetizing. I
Indeed.
think I think it's likely England Ecuador would be my
Yes,
guess. But England Senegal, that would
which is a nightmare draw. England Ecuador for England. It's horrible.
Ecuador got their tails up at the moment, I think.
Wow. Yeah, there's something else. But
Yeah.
Senegal as well wouldn't be a picnic to say the least.
no,
To
absolutely.
say the least. Panama, be careful. I mean, if you watch the Panama Croatia game, which of course you're very brave if you've done that because it was not a great game, and but the Panamanians actually gave Croatia loads of problems. And I mean, really loads of problems, both in terms of their defensive organization, but also going forward. And they were actually far more proactive than I thought they would be. They created some really good chances. And of course, you're going to have a look at this England team where now Jet Spencer's got to play on the right hand side and O'Reilly on the left, if I'm not mistaken, because of Reece James's injury. So it's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch. But before we go, can I just say that one of my dark horses is pleasing me? And it's not a dark horse at all, because they've always been there or thereabouts. It's Belgium. And I think that you're going to start to see the Belgium I hoped I would see before the tournament, which is a really exciting young side. Not at all the side of old. They absolutely walloped New Zealand 5-1. It could have been 10-1, to be absolutely honest. But Rudy Garcia fielded the right Belgian team for the first time, and they started to find their feet, and it was rather nice to watch. So I'm just putting it there. I'm not adding anything to that.
Yeah, no,
Everybody thought,
no,
oh, they drew their first 2
don't
games.
worry.
It was horrible, blah, blah, blah. No. Just steady. Chi va piano va sano. Valentano e va sano. So Belgians, don't forget about them.
No, I won't forget. Anything you want to throw out there, Mark, before we leave it?
I watched the Belgium game too. I have a particular fondness for them as well, and I put them above the Egypt-Iran game, which was 11 o'clock at night, and I'd watched 2 African teams already. So I really wanted to see the Belgium game, and Philippe says they could have won by 10. I think they could have won by 20. I mean, they had so many chances. It was look, the opposition wasn't all that great, to be fair, but I do think you've got something there when you suggest you just need that one little game to get a bit of
Yeah.
momentum going and a bit of
Exactly.
belief again. And yeah, exactly, a little click, a little spark, as it were. And I think that might be it for them, even if it was only New Zealand.
Yeah, and De Bruyne was happy, and it's really honestly, if Kevin is happy, Belgium is happy. Like in Qatar, Kevin was not happy, Belgium was rubbish. When Kevin is happy, by the way, happy birthday, Kevin. It's a completely different thing. And then you've got these players. You've got Jeremy Doku. There's of course a question: will he be able to stay because of the birth of his child? But the young ones are really really quite I think quite special. I follow them quite closely, and I love that team. And I think they could surprise a few people, and I think they will do the quarters minimum. That's my prediction. You can
If I
take
may,
me on this one.
if I may add one little prediction on a different score, I would say that if you're going to pick a game to watch in the last 32, Netherlands, Morocco, with the whole
Oh,
subtext of the Moroccans who live in the Netherlands and Dutch-born
Ooh.
players, that's Monday, and that is a game not to be missed. Because of the whole societal subtext, but also because they are 2 really nice teams. You know, they're 2 decent footballing playing teams, head to head, both wanting to win, both really edgy against each other because of Moroccans in the Netherlands, that whole context. I think if you're going to pick one game in the last 32, that's the one to watch.
Yeah, and the only thing I will add to all of this and leave out there is that my wife is the Kevin De Bruyne of our marriage. I'm Belgium. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you very. It's true.
we've all been
It's
there.
It's true. It's true. No, thank you both very much. I knew that this would be a cracking episode of the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast World Cup specials, and indeed it's proved to be. So thank you very much, and hopefully we can bring you 2 guys together again because it's been amazing. Philippe Auclair, French football journalist, thank you very much. Mark Gleeson, South African football journalist, thank you. And we'll do it again. And thank you. We'll be with you tomorrow with another World Cup special from the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. And of course, you're going to give it a like because it was amazing. See you tomorrow.